What's up, everybody? This is Matt Ferrara. I am one half of the Ice the Kicker podcast, and tonight we are March 31st doing a little mock draft right now on a Wednesday, about to be Thursday. It's here, so obviously wanted to do a little bit of a mock draft to show everybody what I think is going to happen in the first round, and obviously do something after that blockbuster trade with the Dolphins, Niners, and Eagles. So let's get right into it. So obviously, first pick, not a doubt in my mind. The Jaguars are going Trevor Lawrence. I think everybody knew that the second they locked in the number one pick. So no need to beat around the bush there. Now, the second one with the Jets is kind of interesting because a lot of people, for some reason, keep saying, all right, we're going to stick with Darnold. Maybe we go Chase, maybe you go Sewell. But I really don't understand that rationale just for a couple of reasons. One, I think they're definitely going to go Zach Wilson. So I'm going to lock them in a second. And even if people don't think Zach Wilson is going to be better than Sam Darnold, even if he just gives you the same play, you're going to do that because it gives you 4 to 5 years of a little more financial freedom. So I think it's clear and obvious they're going to go quarterback. Which one? We'll see, but I think they're going to lock in Zach Wilson after his electric pro day there. Now, again, with the Niners, everybody seems to think, oh, just because Lynch, the GM, said Jimmy G's our guy, means they're true to their word. They're not by any means of the imagination. So I think they're going to lock in, again, another quarterback because you don't trade two first rounders and a third rounder for a skill guy. Now, which one? That's an interesting one because we saw some kind of rumors, I guess you could say, that Mac Jones is going to be the guy that they're going after. He may fit the Shanahan system, but there's really no quarterback in here that wouldn't necessarily fit it. Maybe not Trey Lance. And I guess if you have to compare Mac Jones to Justin Fields, I feel like Justin Fields is all around more athletic and I think can be a higher ceiling quarterback, especially in that Shanahan system. That's definitely going to elevate the floor of both guys. So I feel like I want to lock in Justin Fields here. I think he's overall a little more dynamic than what Mac Jones brings to the table. Not to knock him by any means, but I think Fields in that system gives Shanahan a little more flexibility with maybe some QB runs, stuff like that. So let's go Fields here. Now, Atlanta, this is an interesting one because you see team needs, it says edge, tight end, linebacker, offensive tackle, and then QB is sitting at 5. Now, I don't really understand why it's that low. I get they have Matt Ryan, but they can move on from Matt Ryan next year and save 20 mil in cap space. Now, the Falcons have to be looking at this situation saying, all right, we have a new coach. We maybe want to go kind of in a little bit of a rebuild. We kind of want to go in a new direction. You have Julio Jones, who's getting older, who you're still paying upwards of 20 million. So what do you do there? Now, I know it may sound weird, kind of an Aaron Rodgers situation where if you draft a quarterback, he's obviously going to sit the bench for a year, maybe even two. But I don't think that's the worst case scenario here. And I think Atlanta's going to see themselves in a situation where, hey, we might not have this opportunity again to get a dynamic quarterback. And obviously, when I say dynamic quarterback, I'm referring to Trey Lance, guy from North Dakota State who, again, didn't play all of this past year besides I think one game. So I think this is a perfect opportunity for him and the Falcons to take Lance and have him sit under Matt Ryan and learn for a year, maybe 2 years, and develop a little bit, and then build that team up. So by the time Lance is ready or Matt Ryan gets traded or released, they're ready to go and compete. So I'm going to lock in Trey Lance here for Atlanta. Now, again, obviously, anytime you have a pick in the top 10 is going to be interesting, but Bengals, I think it's between two people. It's going to be Jamar Chase, have that reuniting with Joe Burrow there, the LSU running back, the national championship team. Or I think the smarter pick will be going Penei Sewell or even Rashawn Slater if some guys or some GMs think that Slater is the better offensive tackle. I think they are in desperate need of some offensive line help. And I know they just lost AJ Green. I know how cool of a story it would be for Chase to go back to and team up with Joe Burrow. But I don't really know what makes the most sense. I guess you could say yes. Would Chase sell some tickets? Yes, but would Sewell protect your franchise quarterback who you're investing $8+ million a year? So for that reasoning, I'm gonna have to forego the skill guy, maybe get one in round two for the Bengals, and then lock in Penei Sewell here. Now, this is where best case scenario for the Dolphins here. You're sitting at 6, you traded back from 3, and you have virtually every guy you could possibly want in pass catchers. Again, I know edge is a huge rush, but you don't have that Chase Young caliber edge guy that you're going to get at 6. And you're obviously not going quarterback. And even offensive tackle with Slater, if Sewell's there, maybe you can make the argument, but this offseason is all about building that offense around Tua and getting him some weapons. Now, obviously this is being recorded on the eve of Kyle Pitts and Jamar Chase's pro day. So after seeing kind of what they brought to the table, Kyle Pitts having that 4.44 40, and then Chase clocking in at as low as 4.38, it raises some questions that maybe them two overtake Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle. Now I love both those guys, and I would be happy with every single one of those guys, but I guess I will buy into the bias right now, or the recency bias of Kyle Pitts' pro day and go with him. I think he is just an absolute freak when it comes to just physical fitness and just him as a mismatch kind of pass catcher. I won't call him a tight end because I think he's more than that. 6'5", 239 pounds, running 4.4 down the field. That's kind of too hard to pass up on. That's a guy who teams are going to need to game plan for, and you don't really get that so often. And especially for the Dolphins here, you want to make sure that you're going to get the absolute 6 best player in this draft. And I think Kyle Pitts is one of those players, as is Jamar Chase. And I think Waddle and Smith can be too, but I think Pitts is one of the most elite players in this draft. So even if they have Mike Gesicki at tight end, you can run some 12 personnel, 2 tight ends on the field, and kind of cause havoc for opposing defenses. So it's locking Pitts there for Miami. Now, Detroit, again, no doubt in my mind, they're going to go wide receiver. Again, you could make the argument they could go quarterback, but you don't really know how much longer Jared Goff has. I know contract wise, he's there for 2-3 more years, but after losing Golladay and Marvin Jones Jr., I think the best case scenario here is go best wideout off the board, and that's going to be Jamar Chase, LSU. Now, here we have Carolina. Now, this is a scenario that a lot of teams kind of find themselves in where if they go Mac Jones, and I know team need is the biggest one there is QB, it'll be the fourth QB off the board. Now, fourth best, who knows? But they're in a situation where there's still a lot of elite prospects left. Now, I don't think Mac Jones is one of those elite prospects. So this is where you're going to see a team like Carolina, I guess, quote unquote, reach for a guy, but they desperately need a quarterback. And then if they don't get one, they're kind of stuck in limbo because they might have a team full of good players and they might start spending big in free agency, but you don't have a quarterback ready to kind of go out there and win. And you don't want to end up in that life cycle where you're getting guys like Fitzmagic, who I obviously love, but they're not doing anything for you long term. So I guess we're going to lock in Mac Jones here, and hopefully he could be the savior. And maybe Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator, brings out the best in him. Now, right here, so you have Denver again, another QB needy team, because I don't really think Drew Lock is the answer here, but there's no quarterbacks left that they're going to go after. I mean, the next closest quarterback they have ranked here is Kyle Trask at 102. So not going to pull the trigger there. I think best case scenario here is going to be a guy like Micah Parsons. I think Micah Parsons is an absolute stud. I know he had some questions about his kind of uh, will to want to keep playing, stuff like that. But I think Micah Parsons is a perfect guy to partner up next to Von Miller because we know Von Miller might be on the back end of his contract with the Broncos, so might as well have that elite sideline to sideline linebacker in Micah Parsons. Now, Cowboys here, I think it's pretty obvious. You don't need wide receiver, even though there's a lot of good ones left. You desperately need some cornerback play. And team need right here, first one, cornerback. They need someone who's going to lock down the number one wide receivers on opposing teams. Now, they lost Byron Jones in free agency to the Dolphins a couple years back. They've invested a ton of money and draft picks into the offense, so got to go get the best cornerback available, and I think that's Patrick Surtain here. Now, this is where the Giants have a good kind of decision to make. Again, I do think they need a little help on that offensive line. I think they need help on the D line as well. They kind of solidified their defensive back and the safeties, cornerbacks, all of them. I think that's all kind of set in stone, which is awesome for them. Linebackers, Blake Martinez stepped up huge for them, so I wouldn't really pick any here. I mean, the next closest one might be like a guy like Zaven Collins or Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah out of Notre Dame, but no one really that I would go and say he's the 11th best player in this draft. So I'm gonna go wide receiver here, and it's between Waddle or Smith. Now you kind of look at their roster and how they're constructed. You have Kenny Galladay, who you just got. He's your kind of bona fide number one receiver, thrives in 50-50 jump balls. You have Shepard and Slayton, who are more those slot guys, and that's where I kind of see Waddle. Now, not saying not pegging Waddle as just a slot guy, but I think a guy like Devontae Smith will benefit the Giants a little bit more and give them a little bit more flexibility. So you can have Slayton and Shepard kind of compete for that slot wide receiver 2-3 kind of role and have Devontae Smith basically be wide receiver 1B behind Kenny Galladay, wide receiver 1A there for the Giants. Now, this is honestly a gift to the Eagles, who can finally right the wrongs of the past 2 years, where they drafted J.J. Arcega-Whiteside over DK Metcalf, and they drafted Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson. Now we're gonna get Jalen Hurts, a Bama reunion here. Not the one many people thought with Tua and possibly one of these guys, but we're gonna go Jalen Hurts and Jalen Waddle here. Now here again, Chargers keep bolstering that offensive line. You already know what you have in Herbert, and I think again, originally I didn't think he was going to be that great, but you saw that with his weapons, Keenan Allen and Austin Eckler in the backfield there, like he did awesome. Now all you got to do is give him a little bit more time, and he might be throwing up MVP season. So we'll lock in the best offensive tackle here available, going with Rashawn Slater. Now, this is where you have a team, I guess you could say, that's doesn't really know, I guess, who they are, what they're doing. You have Kirk Cousins on the back end of his, I would say, career probably, and he's getting paid just absolute ridiculous amounts of money, upwards of 30 mil a year for the past like 3 years. I think he was getting, and they're just not that good of a team. Now you have Justin Jefferson, that was an awesome pick. You have Dalvin Cook, one of the best running backs in the game. But outside of that, there's nothing on the Vikings that really scares you as an opposing coach. Now, what to do, I guess you could say, to fix that. I think I would go with edge guy or edge rusher Jalen Phillips out of Miami. He just came off I believe it was a sub 4.5 40, absolute freak. Let me check out his metrics real quick. 6'5", 258 pounds. I mean, they signed Yannick Ngakoue last offseason. That didn't work out. We know Danielle Hunter kind of wants out there too. So they need to ensure that they have a steady edge guy there for the next 4 to 5 years in Minnesota. So we're going to lock in Jalen Phillips here. Now we have New England. Now, New England obviously just spent $1 billion in free agency, and they really left themselves not many holes other than, I think, personally, quarterback, because I don't really think Cam Newton is the guy. But again, there's no one here available for them to get, and I'm going to assume that there was no kind of trade they were willing to do to trade up here. So out of the guys left, again, an interesting one is Owusu-Koramoah, because you obviously know New England loves their defense and they love linebackers, and they have uh, always been kind of bolstered up by that defense. And then obviously Tom Brady. Now you're not going to get Tom Brady in this draft, but maybe you could find the next protege that can kind of work behind a Kyle Van Noy and Rob Ninkovich, those kind of guys. So we're going to go with versatile linebacker out of Notre Dame, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. And this one, as a Dolphin fan, gets me a little nervous because, again, if I'm the Dolphins here at 18, you're looking up and you're looking at 16, you're saying, damn, they lost Kenyon Drake. They didn't really pick up anybody in free agency that's going to be their running back one. And they clearly kind of left that void here. Now, they just lost Patrick Peterson as well. So I don't really know what Arizona is thinking, but with the signing of Malcolm Butler, I guess you could say that kind of replaced Patrick Peterson. And again, unfortunately, as a Dolphin fan, I think they're going to go Najee Harris. I think he's one of the elite prospects in this draft. I definitely think he's running back one, and I think you pair him up with Kyler and that RPO offense that Cliff Kingsbury runs. I think that's a recipe for success there out in the NFC West. So we're going to lock in Najee Harris here for the Cardinals. Now we have for the Raiders. Again, Raiders, I don't really know what they did. in the offseason. They got Ngakoue, that was awesome. But as far as their offensive line's concerned, they kind of shuffled around a ton of pieces, traded some guys, brought back some guys. So I still though think that they need a little bit more help there on the defensive side. I know, like I just said, Yannick Ngakoue got signed there, but I still think they need another edge centerpiece for them to build around. They've been chasing guys ever since they traded Khalil Mack, so we're gonna lock in the next best edge rusher here in my mind, and I'm gonna go with Quiddy Pay out of Michigan. I mean, again, just absolute 6'4", 277 pounds. This guy's a mammoth. So you might as well lock him in here and you pair him up against any opposing defense. You partner him up across the line from Yannick Ngakoue for the next 2 to 3 years. I think that's a recipe for success there. Now coming back to Miami with the 18th pick, again, you're looking at kind of team needs here. Now, do they need more wide receivers? Yeah, maybe. Will they go Bateman here? I don't really know. Now, this is where you see a guy like Etienne or Javonte Williams, and you kind of say, listen, you need a running back, but I'm not in love with those guys like I am or was with Najee Harris here. So I think they're going to kind of pass on those two guys. And I think they're even going to pass on Azeez Ojulari here. And I know edge is a huge team need for them, but I don't see this particular player or even this whole edge class as a whole as being kind of that elite. I don't think he's going to be the 18th best player in this draft. So I am going to go with, and this might be a little out of left field, but I'm going to go with Trevin Moehrig. I think he is a 6'1", 208, I believe. What does it say here? So you see, satisfies multiple roles here. So he's clearly versatile, and that's something that uh, Brian Flores and his defense loves. And I think Eric Rowe and Bobby McCain back there have done an admirable job. I think they're fan favorites of Brian Flores, but you're going to need someone else to kind of fill that void in future years. So you kind of gives them a little bit more room, say if they want to cut a guy like Bobby McCain after this year, and then you have this guy Trayvon kind of step right up in and be the centerpiece of that defense for years to come. Washington here again, team need again. It's not too hard here. You have Brandon Scherf, who I think is probably going to be gone after this year. I know he's on the franchise tag for the second straight year, getting like 19 million, a long-term deal, and Washington doesn't seem to be in the cards for Brandon Scherf and Washington. So we're going to go with best interior offensive lineman and Elijah Vera Tucker out of USC. Again, now this is where for Chicago, we obviously saw what they did with Andy Dalton making him QB1. He's not the answer now. He's not going to be the answer next year or any year after that. So Chicago's another team who is desperate for quarterback. But again, there's no one left. They're going to really have to dazzle a team like maybe the Falcons to trade up for Trey Lance, or maybe the Panthers to trade up. But I really don't see those QB needy teams trade or accepting a trade back unless it's some sort of 3 first rounder kind of similar deal that they gave up for Russell Wilson. And then you could say, why would Chicago do that for a guy who is going to be the fourth QB off the board? So with that being said, I think Allen Robinson is going to be gone after this year in Chicago. So you might as well get his replacement and get Rashad Bateman. I know Chicago was in hard on Galladay, but that really clearly didn't work out. So locking Rashad Bateman out of Minnesota for Chicago. Now we have Indy. Now, Indy obviously just traded for Carson Wentz. They were basically a drive short of beating the Bills, and not shocking the world, but they have one of the best constructed teams, I think, in the NFL. Their offensive line is absolutely ridiculous. Jonathan Williams had an absurd season. I think Carson Wentz is going to thrive there in that offense. And their defense, they have Darius Leonard as the staple there, and they traded for first rounder last year for DeForest Buckner, who's kind of the centerpiece there on that D line. Now, what do they need? I mean, again, I know they have 3 offensive linemen who are going to be free agents next year, one of them being Quentin Nelson. So obviously you're going to have to re-sign him. So I'm going to go with Tevin Jenkins here, offensive tackle, Oklahoma State, just to give them a little bit more financial freedom so that they don't have to re-sign all 3. Now you can kind of re-sign 2 and have Tevin Jenkins come in and be a plug and play guy. And financially, you're going to save them probably $10 million that he's going to get, opposed to you have to pay one of their linemen, say 10 plus mil. So lock in Tevin Jenkins here, offensive tackle out of Oklahoma State. Here we have Tennessee. Now, obviously, everyone knows that Isaiah Wilson, their former first round pick from last year, was traded to the Dolphins, and about 2 seconds later was cut from the team. So, yes, they do need offensive tackle help. Yes, they also do need wide receiver help because they lost Corey Davis. And then you look at the remaining receivers left here. Now you have Terrace Marshall Jr. and Kadarius Toney are interesting names. Now Terrace Marshall Jr. is a guy who's coming off of a sub 4.40 in the combine, or not in the combine, but at LSU's pro day. And you think maybe he's a good kind of counterpiece to what AJ Brown is doing over there in Tennessee. Now, it also says here that one of the biggest team needs is cornerback. So I'm going to stick with that just because I don't think Terrace Marshall or Kadarius Toney are that 22 pick kind of caliber just yet. I know they could be maybe 27 and on, but just at 22, I feel like they have a little more higher team needs than wide receiver for right now. Maybe round 2 for the Tennessee, that makes perfect sense. So I'm going to lock in J.C. Horn, cornerback out of South Carolina. Now we go to the Jets. Now I think this draft kind of worked perfectly for them where they can get just an elite guy on offense. And I'm going to lock in Travis Etienne for them. They tried Le'Veon Bell. That signing clearly didn't pan out. I know they have LaMichael Pirine, but Frank Gore ended up being RB1 last year. And they need a centerpiece out there to kind of partner up with Zach Wilson. So we're going to lock in Travis Etienne, who's one of the most explosive players, including wide receivers, in this draft. Here we have now Pittsburgh, another team who's definitely in the market for a running back now. I think they have too many other team needs to draft a running back in the first round, whereas the Jets, they already used their 1 first round pick on the quarterback, so they have a little more leeway to kind of get the best player available. Now, I think losing Alejandro Villanueva and just kind of having that offensive line fall apart in the back end of the season makes it clear to me, and probably the Steelers too, that they need some offensive line help. So we're going to lock in Christian Darrisaw, offensive tackle out of Virginia Tech. There we go. Now here we have the Jaguars back up for their second pick. Keep in mind they obviously drafted Trevor Lawrence first overall, and I know they have Josh Allen on the defense there, and I think they're gonna go with Azeez Ojulari, edge rusher out of Georgia, just to kind of bolster up that defensive line. We know Urban Meyer loves his defense. From an offensive standpoint, I mean, you have Laviska Shenault, you still have D.D. Westbrook, you still have DJ Chark, so there's really no wide receivers that I would kind of get. And they also signed Marvin Jones Jr., so there's no one there that would kind of makes the most sense for them to draft a wide receiver here. So might as well bolster up that defensive line in those trenches. So it's locking Azeez Ojulari here. So here we go again. Another team that had a meeting with Jadeveon Clowney. That obviously fell through because no deal came out of it. But edge rusher, I think, is one of their primary needs. Clearly, the Draft Network agrees. So might as well go best edge rusher here available, and that's Jason Owa from Penn State. Again, another guy who had, I think, a 4.5 40. All these 40s for some reason seem to be all sub 4.6, which is just ridiculous for these positions that aren't just wide receiver. Now here we have the Ravens. I know they were kind of in on Galladay. They failed miserably. It is criminal what they are doing right now to Lamar Jackson. He has absolutely no help, and I mean no help at his skill positions. I know J.K. Dobbins, I think, is an awesome fit for them, but from a wide receiver standpoint, Marquise Brown really regressed. You have Mark Andrews there as a tight end, but everyone seems to be kind of honing in on him because no one else can catch the ball in that offense. So they are desperate for a wide receiver. Now, Kadarius Toney being 5'11", he's more of a speedster's kind of slot guy. I think he aligns a little bit too much like Hollywood Brown. So that would kind of be a redundant pick. But Terrace Marshall Jr., 6'3", 200 pounds. Again, like right here, the other guy. Similar to kind of what Justin Jefferson was when Jamar Chase was playing. I think Terrace Marshall Jr. is, like the description said, he's the other guy. Very overshadowed, but he thrived a little bit when needed to be a wide receiver one this year because Jamar Chase was out. And I think having that height gives that Baltimore offense a little more flexibility, and they don't have to be as one dimensional, just doing kind of read options and any slant passes. You can air it out a little bit and throw those 50-50 balls, not just to Mark Andrews, but now to this big body Terrace Marshall Jr. Now here we have the Saints up again. Another team. Is Jameis the answer? I don't really know. So they're not going to go running back here because obviously they have Alvin Kamara and they still have Latavius Murray too. Team need wide receiver here. Now, again, this is one where you see a lot of cornerbacks here, offensive tackle. I think Christian Barmore could be big for them if needed. Nick Bolton, I think, is a very good linebacker. But I'm going to go with Kadarius Toney. Now, they lost Emmanuel Sanders in free agency, and they've kind of been like subtly shopping Michael Thomas. I feel like for some time now that the relationship with Michael Thomas and the Saints seems to be kind of on the fritz there. So you're going to need to get Jameis Winston or who's the other quarterback's escaping my name, Taysom Hill, or get him whoever's at the reins for the Saints at quarterback some help. So Kadarius Toney is an absolutely explosive athlete. And you saw that with his time in Florida. You saw that at the Senior Bowl. So I think this is a great pick for Sean Payton, the Saints here. Now, Green Bay says here, team needs offensive tackle, wide receiver, cornerback, interior defensive lineman. Now, I wrote this up in a old mock of mine it was about to get published, but that was prior to the big trade with the Dolphins and Niners. Christian Barmore, I think, is an absolute beast. Now, a lot of Packers fans are going to be familiar with BJ Raji and how explosive he was on that defense and how impactful he was to that defense. Now, I'm hoping that Christian Barmore has an even better sacked celebration than BJ Raji because I think they're both going to be spitting images of each other. I mean, you have a man here, 6'5", 310 pounds. That's who you want as your centerpiece on that team, especially because they run kind of a 3-4 defense. I know they might be transitioning, but you plug this guy anywhere, either in front of the center or off to the guard, he's going to cause havoc. And you have both the Smith brothers kind of on the outside. That's an absolutely, not I want to say unstoppable, but close to it. You know they're going to wreak havoc for any offense that they face. So we're going to lock in Christian Barmore here, Alabama defensive tackle. Rounding out here close to the end, the Bills kind of, again, another team that has their roster pretty perfectly constructed. And this is what gives these teams here, ever since the Packers, Bills, Chiefs, and Bucks don't really have many team needs. So they can kind of get away with picking best player available. Where some teams here you see in like the 20s, maybe the high teens, may need to quote unquote reach a little bit because they're a lot more desperate to fill a need. Now, I know there were some rumors about running back to the Bills, but I don't really see the point in that because you have Devin Singletary and you have Zach Moss. You have two very, very good running backs, especially that tandem. Adding a third doesn't seem to make the most sense to me. Now, we obviously know how good Tre'Davious White is, and I know you have Josh Norman there too. Why not have a third guy there at cornerback, probably play more of a slot corner? And I think you're going to go with Caleb Farley here, cornerback out of Virginia Tech. I think you plug him into that defense that's already great to play the slot corner. I think that's an awesome thing for them to have and could really kind of catapult them into even more success when you have to go against those track stars that they have out in Kansas City in potential AFC championship games for many years to come. Now, here you have the Kansas City Chiefs who traded both their tackles. They picked up Thuney. They still kind of made some moves on the offensive line. And I think might as well go some more here. Actually, no. Yeah. We're gonna stick with it. Stick with that thought process. I think they're gonna commit to that offensive line because they don't want to see what happened to them again happen in the Super Bowl twice now. And you already know Patrick Mahomes is awesome. You know their weapons are awesome. The defense is obviously still, I would say, top 10, top 12, maybe at least. But you need to get that offensive line better to ensure that you can compete with the elite defenses in the league. So I think you lock in here Samuel Cosmi, offensive tackle out of Texas. And now this is where, again, the rich just get richer. Javonte Williams, arguably running back one, not to me, but a lot of scouts and analysts and stuff like that have Javonte Williams, the running back out of North Carolina, as one of the best, even not even just running backs, but players in this draft. His kind of blend of explosive and power is awesome to watch. When you watch this film, he just runs through people. It kind of reminds you like of Leonard Fournette, who they have there now, but only on a 1 year deal. So I think getting Javonte Williams, again, cheap labor, you get him for 4 years, even if you want to use that 5th year option. I think it's an awesome decision here to pair up behind Leonard Fournette, maybe as running back one, or even you might even beat him out. And then you have Javonte Williams right next to Tom Brady, kind of taking snaps from the best there. So I think this is a perfect situation of the rich getting richer. And I think with this pick, it just, again, it makes that offense even better, which is crazy to think about. So I'll just do a little recap here. So we went Jacksonville, Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, the Jets, Justin Fields to the Niners, Trey Lance to the Falcons, Penei Sewell to the Bengals, Kyle Pitts to the Dolphins, Jamar Chase to the Lions, Mac Jones to Carolina, Micah Parsons to Denver, Patrick Surtain to the Cowboys, Devontae Smith to the Giants, Jalen Waddle to the Eagles, Rashawn Slater to the Chargers, Jalen Phillips to Minnesota, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah to the Patriots, Najee Harris to the Cardinals, Kwity Paye to the Raiders, Trayvon Moehrig to the Dolphins, Elijah Vera Tucker to Washington football team, Rashad Bateman to the Chicago Bears, Tevin Jenkins to the Colts, J.C. Horn to the Titans, Travis Etienne to the Jets, and Christian Darrisaw to the Steelers, Azeez Ojulari to the Jaguars, Jason Owa to the Browns, Terrace Marshall Jr., future wide receiver one in Baltimore, to the Ravens, Kadarius Toney to the Saints, Christian Barmore, B.J. Raji 2.0 to the Packers, Caleb Farley, cornerback out of Virginia Tech, to the Bills, and then rounding off the draft, we got Samuel Cosmi, offensive tackle, to the Chiefs, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers rounding out the first round with Javonte Williams. Thank you again for sticking with me. If you have, again, let me know in the comments, or whether you agree with who your team got, disagree, let me know, and hopefully I'll get back to you and we can kind of conversate on what my picks here were. Have a good one.